Right.
always need to have backups to our backups.
Yep. All right. It's 7 o'clock. Are you guys ready?
Ready, let's roll it.
All right. And we're live.
All right. Hey, everybody out there in Knoxville. So, welcome to our Facebook Live event for Healthy Connections. We're here to talk a little bit about your relationship and how to take care of it during the most unusual holiday season you have ever had, I'm imagining. Dana and I are here going to talk about it. I want to introduce myself. I'm Adam York, the board president for Healthy Connections. I am also the co-owner of Healing Hearts, a counseling practice focused on emotionally focused couples therapy, really just focused on making sure couples are cared for in a really good way through all sorts of seasons of life. And Dana, I'll let her introduce herself. She is my partner in this practice and the founder. So.
Hello, and I hello Natalie. One of my people, my fans, just said hello on our Facebook Live. Our first commenter. Glad you're joining us. But I'm Dana Vince. I'm the owner of Healing Hearts Counseling. Been an emotionally focused couples counselor for quite a few years now, and just really passionate about bringing good information to couples, especially during what is a particularly challenging time. And the holidays are always challenging and stressful, and now we're trying to do the holidays in the isolated kind of state we're in this pandemic. So just really want to bring some useful, helpful information to all you out there watching.
Yeah. So what we hope is people like maybe Natalie has a question, or maybe others will have questions that they will shoot to us, and we can try to answer and talk through some of those. But we decided to start at the biggest level to try to understand couples' relationships and where they tend to get stuck. And then we'll sort of funnel that down into some specific things that happen during the holidays, some specific things that have happened during the pandemic that affect couples' relationships, and how we can navigate those in a healthy and good.
And Adam's
to ask Dana some questions. She's going to ask me some questions, and we hope you all will ask us some questions as well. Okay, so Dana, tell me a little bit about how in a broad sense do couples get stuck?
Well, so what we see most often is patterns of conflict, negative spirals that couples get into. And typically whatever they think the problem is not actually the problem. It's mostly about secure connection. So when we don't feel connected in a safe, loving way, it can tend to spiral us into negative patterns of reaction with one another. So we really look for what's underneath these conflicts that happen for couples. What are the underlying emotions that are running through the patterns that happen? So we look for where is there not that connection with one another that's leading to triggers that happen, negative reactions that then set off a pattern between each other. Did I answer that in a way that makes sense?
It does to me, but I'm a therapist, so that's probably not a good question to answer me. But tell me a little bit of the concrete way this plays out. So a couple, you say what they think they're really arguing about it's really about secure connection. So tell me how it's really about secure connection. What's something that might come up that a couple thinks they need to resolve?
So my favorite one to use is the dishwasher. Right. So we might have an argument over the dishwasher, and couples will come in saying we fight over this really petty stuff, and we don't really understand why these seemingly innocuous things send us into this spiral. So if I'm using the dishwasher as an example, and I'll use a cliched sample here, but of course it can go either way. But maybe the wife is being critical of how her husband loads or unloads the dishwasher, right? He might get defensive or angry and say, you do it then, and I'm not going to bother. What might be going on underneath the surface of this type of argument? She may be feeling like I'm kind of alone. I don't have a partner in this. And the things that I ask you to do or ask for your help with, you don't really hear me, you don't really respond to me in a useful way. So I become critical and kind of poke the bear because I'm not feeling seen or heard. And on the other side, he might be feeling like no matter what I do, I can't seem to get it right. I'm even criticized the way I load the dishwasher. So he ends up defensive and sort of pulls back and disengages because he thinks no matter what I do, I seem to make it worse. And it might look to her like he doesn't care. It might look to him like no matter what he does, he can't get it right. And that's really about, it's not about the dishwasher, right? It's not about that as the issue. It's about these underlying emotional experiences that drive the conflict that happens between couples.
Yeah, that he's having this experience like he's failing.
Yeah.
And so he kind of doesn't want to be in the dish conversation. And she is trying to get him to pay attention to something there. And that's all about secure connection. They're really stuck on, they're talking about dishes, but what they should be talking about is the secure connection there.
Right, the underlying feelings of, the longings that are there, for the male in this situation, maybe, yeah, I feel like I'm failing. I feel like no matter what I do, I can't be pleasing to my partner. But under that is a longing that I want to know I'm accepted. I want to know that I'm good enough. But if I can't ever get it right, I kind of pull away. And when I pull away, my partner's on the other side going, "Where are you? You're not there for me. I'm kind of alone in this." And when that person's feeling that way, their tendency is to poke, right? To become critical or demanding. But really it's a call. It's a reaching out, of saying, "Hey, I want to be seen. I want to be heard." But that's not a clear signal to the partner. So they're both behaving in a way that triggers the other and pulls one another into this spiral.
Yeah.
So let's see, we have a question.
Yeah, we got our
So the question is, I'm divorced, but have many friends struggling in their marriage with the dishwasher situation. How do we even allow it to get there in marriage? That's a really great question. And I think I always go to the frog in the boiling water metaphor, that if you put a frog in cold water and bring it to a boil, it doesn't recognize the change and will die, versus if you throw a frog in already boiling water, it recognizes the danger and jumps out, right? These things start off really slow and build up over time. And the distance and disconnect becomes greater if we don't catch it and understand what's happening. So there's another part to the question. What are some ways we can try and not let it even get there? That's a loaded question. Yeah. Did you want to say something to that, Adam?
Well, yeah, maybe just to add on to what you were saying about the it slowly boils and we get there. Another reason we get to the dishwasher situation over and over again is it's easier to argue about dishes than it is for me to tell you I'm lonely and I need you. Yeah. It is easier for me to argue about going to Monday Night Football, which we will be done before that happens tonight, if you're on there. I just want to clarify that. It is easier for me to argue about that than it is for me to tell you I'm worried I'm disappointing you all the time.
That's a great point, because really what it's about, what creates.
No. Okay. Yeah. So
I think that you cut out there for a moment, Adam.
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
That's a great segue into talking about vulnerability, that connection requires vulnerability, which is tough. If we can have it without that, that would be great, right? Vulnerability is hard, but it's especially hard if we don't feel emotionally safe. If we get any sort of signal, especially if we have some childhood history that might come into play, if we get any sort of signal from our partner that we're going to be judged, or that you're not going to be responsive to me in a loving, caring way, then I'm not going to be vulnerable, right? So we need that emotional safety. But our partner is on the other side also feeling fears and maybe a lack of vulnerable safety. And we don't always recognize the ways that we're setting that off in each other. And so part of what the work that we do is helping couples kind of slow down and tune into what's really going on and vulnerably share with each other, make it safe enough to do that, and help each other see how they can make it safe enough to do that.
Yeah. And so that's one way, thinking of 5 ways, if I had some time, I'd try to make them like rhyme, and I would try to find 5 distinct ways. But for right now, if we can think of a few ways, one thing is like slowing it down is what I heard you say there, Dana. And I think that's important. That's what we do as therapists. We slow it down. And that's another one of those 5 ways you can try and not let it get to that escalated dishwasher fight, is to slow it down yourself. That's a thing I think is really important for all couples to do, is to really slow down what's happening to understand it, better. Right, Dana? That's kind of what I hear you saying.
I think the second thing would be really tuning into your own emotional world. You have to identify, like, if you're triggered by something, if you're worked up about something, you're really upset about something, especially if if your reaction doesn't seem to fit. It's like, oh, I'm getting really angry about the dishwasher. Why am I getting so angry? Is to kind of ask yourself, what does it mean to me? What is it about this situation? What message am I getting from my partner in this? Am I feeling like I don't matter? Am I feeling like I'm not important? What is it that's really getting me in this moment? And once we can identify that, then we can turn to our partner and share clearly, hey, this is what's hurting right now, and I need some help with that. I need you to understand, right? And the partner's job is to listen and understand and acknowledge, right, what's happening.
Yeah. So we got to slow down. I'm going to try to summarize these. Slow down, tune into ourselves, reach out with that, and then respond to that. I got 2 R's in there, reach and respond, right? So there's 4 things we can do to keep from the dishwasher. Right? If we slow down, tune into what's going on inside our world, then reach out with what we've tuned into. And then on the other side, what our partner is, respond when we really reach out in that vulnerable way. That's a part of how we can keep from getting into as many of the dishwasher situations. Although, Dana, as you and I both know, and part of what we tell couples is, you're going to have another dishwasher fight, right? You're going to have another argument over Monday Night Football, right? You're going to have another escalated argument. It
Right.
is impossible. The human condition, we are vulnerable to each other. It becomes impossible to never get in those types of things. So I don't know how you would maybe shift that question, think like, how do we keep it from getting, so escalated so often, maybe is a better way of saying that, right?
I want to piggyback off what you just said there. That one thing that's important to recognize when couples are stuck in these negative patterns is it's happening because they matter to each other.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes couples will say, I only have this issue with my partner. I don't have these communication issues with other people in my life. It's like, well, no one can really hit your tender spots like your partner can. So if I can't reach and connect with the most important person to me, that sends us into a really reactive state. Well, why? Because they're the most important to us. So they get the biggest reaction. But then that reaction sends a misguided signal to our partner. Right. And then we get into the spiral. So again, the way to avoid that is to understand that piece, right? That we're having this reaction in the first place because we matter to each other. Now let's figure out where we're missing one another. Let's figure out where we're missing that connection, because we can't solve any problems, whether it be the dishwasher, the kids, whatever the subject might be, until we're in connection. Right. So I have to know, in the book, Hold Me Tight, we use the acronym ARE, are you there for me? And the letters stand for A, accessible, R, responsive, and E, engaged. Those are the 3 ingredients to a secure connection. That I'm accessible to you, that when you need me, I show up and I'm there. And I'm responsive to you. When you share what's going on for you, when you share, I respond to that in a loving, caring way, and that I'm engaged, I'm present, and I'm here. And we're not going to do this perfectly, right? But if we impart these 3 ingredients on a regular basis, we're going to have a secure connection with one another. That's what makes all of us feel safe to be vulnerable and to connect. So like Adam was saying, we're going to have conflicts. We're going to have moments of disconnect. There's no way for a couple to be connected 100% of the time, especially when we have right now a pandemic going on, tons of stress, tons of things pulling us in a million different directions. We're not our best selves. We're tired. We're isolated. So we're going to be more reactive. But when we can slow down and turn to and say, okay, maybe I'm feeling a little bit alone and I need to know you're there. I need to know I'm not alone in this. And an accessible, responsive, engaged partner says, okay, I'm right here. And you know what? I'm feeling some things too. And we listen to each other and we repair and we get back into connection.
That's really good. That's really good. Yeah. That ARE is really helpful. It's all about secure connection, all about being responsive to each other. So I'm thinking about shifting and focusing kind of what we're talking about is we're trying for secure connection. Things are really important. We're really important to each other, and that's why we get in a pattern, right? So, Dana, I'm going to ask you this question to get us started down this road. What is it about the holidays, about, you know, all that comes with these holidays from Thanksgiving, you know, through the new year? What is it about the holidays that seems to particularly touch some of these tender spots and cultivate some of these patterns? What are some typical patterns that couples are getting into around the holidays, and how can we find that secure connection place around these patterns?
Boy, that's a loaded one, right? That's a loaded question. So, you know, I think expectation is one. We have this really high expectation that things should be really special. This is such an important time of year. So we ask a lot of ourselves during that time to try to create, you know, the perfect atmosphere for family, friends. So that's just a lot of pressure, number one. Family, extended family, in-laws, you know, all that can bring a lot. One of the arguments that comes up quite a bit, that in my experience with couples, when extended family is going to be around, and there's that kind of family conflict that happens, is the phrase that sticks out most to me is, do you have my back? That, hey, when your mom comes and, you know, she can get overbearing and take over the kitchen, but you don't stand up for me. You don't set the boundary with her. And then I'm left to deal with, you know, this is kind of an example of what happens. And, you know, maybe they're arguing about how the turkey is cooked. But again, just like the dishwasher, it's not about the turkey. It's about, are you in this with me? Can I count on you to have my back and hold, you know, stand up for me if your mom comes in and, you know, tries to tell me how I'm doing something wrong, or whatever, you know, whatever the case may be. That's one that comes up a lot. Another one that comes up a lot is, do I have a partner in this? There's a lot to be done at the holidays. There's presents to be bought. There's, you know, gifts to be wrapped. There's food to be cooked. And without getting too much into gender biases, I think oftentimes women feel a lot of that pressure to do all that stuff. And not to say it can't be flipped. I'm sure there are, you know, relationships where the husband may feel that way. And again, it's not about the task to be done. It's not about the divvying up of chores. It's about, do I have a partner in this? You know, are you sharing responsibility with me and helping me take care of all that needs to be done? And so that can kick up a pattern between a couple.
Yeah, absolutely. Just to piggyback on what you said, Dana, so you're not just saying it from the female's perspective. There's good research that there's a disproportionate weight around this falls on women's shoulders. So to fulfill some of these expectations around tradition. So that is just the truth. And I appreciate your sensitivity so that you weren't just bashing men completely. So I feel handled very delicately right now. This is a safe and secure environment between us. We have a secure connection here, which is good. So, but what you said there, yeah, it struck a couple things. There's questions that the holiday expectations stir up of, am I important? We're not fighting over whose turkey recipe is, you know, the cooking recipe is the best. We're fighting over, am I important to you, right? In how we navigate those relationships, right? And then the loneliness you brought up, that is another thing that all these are do I have a partner in these big ventures we're taking on and navigating all these social things and all the tasks of the holidays? You know, it's am I alone in this is a big thing that's coming up as well, right? These are two big questions. Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say to that, I think with the pandemic, that's even more so, right? Because, you know, we're already in a culture where we're pretty isolated and we really rely on our partner for that connection and social experience. I mean, we're social beings. And, whereas years ago we had a lot of family around us, we didn't move away, but now we do. And now we have people, even me personally, my parents can't come for Christmas, and that's been a really sad thing. So, family gatherings and friend gatherings aren't happening this year. So then we need our partner even more, right? So we really need that connection even more when we're feeling really isolated. And so that can make these conflicts between couples even more pronounced and inflamed, because I'm feeling really isolated and alone.
Yeah. Yeah, I think about that, and holidays are a time to get together. And we're in this year where we're not getting to experience that in as deep a way as we wanted to. Or if we are experiencing that, the way we're navigating the togetherness is fraught with a lot of hard conversations. But yeah, there's so much more isolation and loneliness. And if that is what we're talking about, that's one of the big triggers to that dishwasher fight or to an escalated conflict that couples get into, is loneliness. That we are kind of now more than ever, exposed to that feeling in a really pronounced and profound way. But Dana, you and I have also talked about some of our, and I think this is maybe good to comment and experience at times how some of the quarantining and the taking away of some of the extra activities, the extra social engagement, some of the work life balance during this has not just been unilaterally a bad thing for couples, right? And you were talking to me about that earlier today.
Yeah, it's kind of gone really one of two ways. It's either, for some couples, it's made things worse, right? It's really highlighted some of these negative patterns and made them even harder to deal with. But for some couples, it's been a bonding experience. I've had some couples that I've worked with that have really moved into a different phase of their relationship, where they were able to deepen their connection with each other, where they had some time to step back, from all the busyness of life, and really kind of take stock of their priorities and what's most important to them, and have really utilized that time to connect on a deeper level. And so that's been, for some, it's been a really amazing thing. So it just, it can hit us one way or another. It's, but I think for the vast majority, that I think it's been a challenge. There's definitely been challenges.
Yeah. One of the biggest things I've seen in my own relationship, probably in other relationships, is navigating, childcare, kids. And what happens is there's less and less ability during this, the pandemic, to get childcare outside the home. So a couple can have some time together to talk about these sort of more sensitive subjects, to really turn to each other in that more accessible, responsive, engaged way we're talking about. So I know my wife and I were talking earlier this year, it was a few months before we went on like a date, during this thing, where we went, and we did it outside, but we got some form of childcare and we got some food to go, and we sat in our car, and that has been really hard for couples to find the sort of balance there to prioritize their relationship. And it's really become really focused in many ways on taking care of the kids and on keeping them. And I'm seeing a lot of that strain. I'm also seeing a very pragmatic way, the strain around couples sometimes unable to seek resources, whether it's one of, Healthy Connections workshops, which, again, we do have some online workshops available with ePrep. We're calling them Pillow Talk. And so we hope people will look on Healthy Connections website and look into that. But it's hard for couples to engage with some of those things, but we're trying to have some resources available. It's been hard for couples to engage in therapy, even couples who were in a season where they really knew they needed it, wanted it. They weren't able to access childcare, and they just had to stop, or the cost of it because of loss of jobs was there. And we know a lot of people are in that scenario where they're sort of surviving, and they're probably in many ways taking less care of their relationship, for many couples than they were before, with regular date night routines, or just routines where kids were doing other things that they're not engaged with right now. There's very little naturalistically happening for a lot of couples that allow them to turn and be together. And that's a huge strain I see. And some I see for a lot of couples that they don't really check in on, and really until they kind of gotten to a level where they're into World War II about the dishwasher. And then all of a sudden they're like, oh, wow, we maybe have got some stuff going on that we're not talking about or connecting well on, I don't know if you'd add anything else to that, Dana. Oh, I also see we have a question coming in.
Yeah, let's, I wouldn't add, yeah, I think that all those things are, I want to move our conversation at some point to ways that ideas we can help give people when they are stuck in that. But I think those are all, yeah, that's what's happening for a lot of people. So the question we have is there a way to just reset or start over in our poor communication habits or patterns? Let me restate that because I kind of jumbled my words. Is there a way to just reset or start over in our poor communication habits or patterns? I love this question. It's like, can we just have a fresh start? And I think even just the fact that you're asking that speaks to how much you really care about your partner, and kind of like, hey, yeah, we're having some struggles. How can we restart this? And I think it starts with just identifying where do we get caught? What's happening with us? Because typically there's a pattern. If we look underneath the surface, our conflicts might look all different. Maybe we have one argument that's about the kids, or we have an argument that's about the household chores, but usually the argument underneath is one simple thing of, I'm feeling alone and disconnected from you in some sort of way. And what's a way we can get back into connection? So my grand answer is yes, I think you can have a restart, but I think there's some work to do to get there. And that's identifying what's the pattern that goes on between us? What are those underlying hurts that we're not really addressing? And what are we needing from one another to heal and repair those hurts so we can move into a stronger connection with one another? Would you have anything to add to that, Adam?
I think there's a lot of, I don't know if this is a worry you're speaking to Mark, but I really, the desire is like, I want to be in a good place with my partner. And sometimes our past poor communication habits or patterns seem kind of overwhelming to get back to. Just, I want to kind of clean slate to be at a good place, right? And this is a complicated thing, but there's a two-sided coin, and I often tell this to couples. Our emotional brain doesn't have a good sense of time, okay? And what I mean by that is our emotions, and this is the heavy sense of it, when you sometimes feel something that reminds you of middle school or high school, it feels like you're right back there, right? It just feels, it's like as if you're right back there. And that can be a downside if it's a bad thing. It can be a real positive thing. I went hiking with my son this weekend, and I went to the chimney tops, and I hadn't been there since before he was born. And I had this beautiful moment. I remembered when I was like in college hiking this, and I was like, ooh, I'm now doing this with my son. And it was this whoosh of emotion of, ooh, I'm like right back in this journey, but now I get to have my son with me. It's just a beautiful moment. But when it's a good memory, it's a good thing. When it's a bad memory, it can be a really hard thing. But here's the flip side to the coin about the reset button. Because your emotions don't have a good sense of time, if you can feel something now, it can heal what you felt in the past. So what happens now is if you're responsive to your partner in a way that you weren't in the past, if they can talk to you, actually, this is what we have couples do in therapy, talk about a past moment that was really hard, or talk about a pattern of communication or habit that they were stuck in for a while that was really hard. If you can tell your partner cares, they're moved by your pain, and they're accessible now in a way they weren't then, it actually helps heal that. And you can feel now what you needed then. And so that's the really cool thing that happens with the emotional brain that doesn't tell time very well. It's like you can heal the past too. So you sometimes dwell in the past and the present, but you can also sort of use the present. Creating new communication patterns has a way of healing and in some ways resetting, rewiring the brain. And we actually know this from neuroscience research, rewiring the brain and actually resetting the way you relate, the way you feel with your partner. Right? So I went off on that a little bit of a tangent there, and I got a little sentimental because I enjoyed hiking this weekend with my son. So
I think
yeah.
that was really, really useful what you shared, and it makes me think of, and I just lost my train of thought. I'll come back to it.
Yeah.
But where do we want to move the conversation from here? Because I'm thinking about what are the ways that that couples can stay connected as they go through these stressful and isolating times. Oh, I know what I was going to say. Okay, let me back up. So what I was going to say is what happens for a lot of couples is old wounds come up over and over again. And it came up in what you were saying, Adam, that couples can be really bewildered. Like if there was a hurt from the past and one person is saying, but I've said I'm sorry so many times. Why does this keep coming up? And that can be why patterns repeat, because it's an injury that hasn't been healed. And when I say injury, I mean on an emotional level, a time that there was vulnerability and there wasn't the accessibility and response that was needed. And so that becomes an injury, and which was what Adam was alluding to. So it's sort of like, for that injury to really heal, I need my partner to get and understand the impact that they had on me at the time. And if I can get you to be here now and hear me now, like Adam said, that can heal the wounds of the past. But so if something's coming up over and over again, it needs to be addressed. We can't just push it under the rug. Time does not heal wounds if they're not addressed in an emotionally corrective kind of way. And that's a lot of the work we do. So sometimes those poor communication patterns stem from really deep wounds that happened early in the relationship, or sometimes even wounds that happened before the two of you got together that need to find a way to be healed and addressed. So anyway, so moving into so what do we do? So, whether it's a situation where we can't be with family in the same kind of way, or in our relationship we're feeling stressed, what are some creative ways that not just work through conflicts, but also find ways to connect with one another? So what are some of your thoughts about, I have my list here that I can go through, but anything that's coming to your mind, Adam, that you wanted to share?
My internet went out just slightly. Your question was, what are some creative ways we can, tell me that again?
Help combat the stress and stay connected during this difficult time.
Yeah. One of the things I think a lot about, and part of it's probably because I'm looking at Dana's background and the stockings she has there, which are a lovely tradition to have, is the presence of traditions, during a season like this. And those can be really therapeutic to really engage in those traditions. You might have to with some social distancing, but I think my tendency, maybe I've heard other people's tendencies, is to just, well, Christmas is canceled this year, and to go to despair and things like that. I tend to go there. My wife is a more creative thinker, so she's going to be like, how can we make Christmas the best ever? Challenges are just opportunities, and that's what we want to seize on. So one of the things I think about for couples is, how can you engage in some of the traditions you've always engaged in, whether that's around gift giving, whether that's around staying connected with family virtually, or in other ways. But also, I wonder how you might create new traditions during this time. For many couples, I found, they usually have an argument or a disagreement around whose in-laws to go to for Christmas. And now that's off the table. So you get to create your own new tradition in your home this year, right? For some people. I know I'm being light about that. There's a lot to grieve in the losses we have. And that's sort of the second part of, that we have to manage well this Christmas, is the grieving of real losses of life in the world that it just feel big, real losses of traditions, just, non-tangible losses of all sorts of things. And there's just a heavy grief sitting over a lot of us. But I think we need to grieve together with our partners during this season, find ways that we can turn towards each other in that grief, and not just act like that it's not there or it's not hard. And so I think some, creative and fun ways to do that. I've heard a lot about some virtual, gift giving. You send people the gifts and you have them, open up the gifts together to have some positive rituals around it. Dana, I don't know if you've heard of other creative ways, either of creating new traditions, maintaining old traditions in a new way, or just kind of walking through a heavy season together that you found are creative in this?
Well, a couple of things. One, I think just acknowledging the basic truism of emotions is that we can't bypass them. It's not, if we stuff them, if we try to sidestep them, it doesn't work. The easiest way to move through hard emotions is to allow ourselves to feel them. And so I think step one of any of this is to just acknowledge. And I think that's where your partner, I'm talking about secure connection, is our resource to have a safe space to just feel with one another. So I think asking each other, like, how are you doing? But really genuinely asking that question, right? How are you? And giving your partner space to talk about what's overwhelming, what they might be grieving, the loss that they feel. Let's not try to just fix it or push it away, because it doesn't work, right? Oftentimes, if a partner shares pain, we want to fix it. We want to make it go away. But actually, the fastest way to make it go away is to make space for it. Kind of counterintuitive, right? But the more we can make space for those feelings, the quicker and easier we can move through them. So we have to acknowledge what's overwhelming, what hurts, what's sad, because there are sadnesses. And then that's going to open up space to get creative. So some things that I've listed off is, one, there's that, just allowing yourself to grieve, checking in with each other on a regular basis. How are you feeling? And what do you need? How can I help? A lot of times people guess what their partner needs, and they just come in and kind of maybe take over something, and then their partner gets frustrated and it's like, but I was trying to help, and now I'm just being a burden to you. And again, this can kick up our cycle. But if we just can tune in and communicate and say, hey, how are you doing? I think I see you struggling. Am I right? And if so, how can I help? So just those basics of communication. And use each other as that resource. Give each other time and space for self-care, especially if you're, all in the home together and you're trying to manage and balance work and kids. Maybe you have some time off, but make sure you're giving each other some time for self-care, whether it's quiet time to have a bath or go for a walk or whatever, giving each other space for that. But I just think there's some fun ways that, cook a meal together, bake together, put some music on and get silly and dance together. Like, again, going back to Adam saying, create some new traditions. Maybe you have a new living room Christmas dance that you make up a routine. You could get silly and goofy with it, right? But just try to find ways to be with each other and have some fun. And like I said, if cooking's not your thing, Adam talked about going on a hike, maybe get outdoors, get some exercise. There's creative ways that you could spend time together, even in a pandemic. You have to make it a priority, but you have to get into connection first. Anything you would add to that, Adam?
Oh no, gosh, you had a pretty good list there of just fun thoughts about how to stay. What a gift to give your partner, just to stay present with them and to really be doing, right? In a year when, I think we're all just kind of overwhelmed and grief-stricken and things like that. Yeah, it's we've been in survival mode. we've hunkered down, we've done the social distancing, we've worn the masks, we've done the quarantine, you know, and what a gift it is for us to check in. I know I love it when I experience that from my wife, when she's just really curious, you know, about how my day is, right? And I know she experiences that from me, you know, not when I come home and it's like, how was your day? Okay, let's kick into what are we doing with the kids, you know? And there's not a moment to like actually space to actually process that, right? And we're so go and trying to manage all the things of life. So yeah, so that's one thing you said that really stuck with me, is to give your partner that gift of really attentive presence, you know. There's
Another one I want to add to that comes up as you're talking is giving each other grace. Because, you know, when we're stressed, when we're underslept and overworked, you know, we're going to be maybe more snippy, more irritable, more short-tempered. That's just our human nature, right? So let's give each other grace. And if that's coming from your partner, if we just look at the behavior, right? The behavior might be something that rubs us the wrong way and we don't like, but what's behind the behavior? So I always want to invite people to look at, if your partner is behaving in a way that is not appealing to you, get curious about what's going on that's leading to that behavior, rather than just getting angry at them for behaving that way, right? Assume the best of your partner, that they must be struggling. And so if they're short-tempered, if they're being real snippy, if they're being irritable, that's a time to, it's not easy to do, right? Because we can get reactive to that, but that's a time to check in. Are you okay? You seem maybe stressed. Give your partner that grace to not be perfect, that there's a lot going on, and then tune in and ask those questions so that we can make space to get back into connection.
Yeah. Well, let me piggyback on that and sort of present like a common conversation I think that's happening right now that I want to be curious about. So here's what I see happening for, you know, couples. They're talking about, you know, how to manage this pandemic and being around family. And they either have different political persuasions, or they just have different perspectives on how they need to navigate all this, right? And what I see happening a lot that I think maybe lacks this curiosity, so this is maybe a caution thing, is I see, you know, one partner saying, no, we're not going to do that. It's off the table. That can't happen. Or that has to happen. I'm not having a conversation about this. We're going to do this, you know, and it's going to have that. And that really cuts off connection and intimacy when those types of things happen, right? It's not that you can't feel strongly about how you should navigate the pandemic and the holidays. You should, as Dana said, the holidays are stirring up our most important relationships, our most important traditions. And when things and people that are important to us get stirred up, we have strong feelings about it, right? But I think what you're saying, Dana, is that curiosity is really the pathway to connection during this. So this is what I want to present. So there's the conversation we don't want to happen. This is, no, this can't happen. You know, a 15-second conversation, you know, it's the, I say no, you say no. We both go to our rooms, lonely, angry, you know, tired. What's a different way that conversation can go for couples?
So one thing that comes to my mind when you're saying that is connection takes risk. So it asks, somebody has to take a risk. Vulnerability is risky, right? So if we're in an angry, defended stance, we're protecting ourselves. I mean, that's just the truth of it. We're not trying to be hurtful. We're not, you know, most humans, we're protecting ourselves. When we're protecting ourselves, we're not risking with one another, and then we cannot have connection. So when you say we both go to our separate rooms, we're both angry, if nobody's willing to risk, we're going to stay there, right? But if one person is willing to risk and say, hey, can we talk about this? What's going on? What are you feeling? What am I feeling? I love the word curiosity. Like, can we stay curious? Can I be curious about why I'm being so reactive? Can I be curious about why you're being so reactive? And what is it that you're feeling? Tell me why this is important to you. Can we talk this through? That goes back to one of our first steps of slowing down, right? We have to slow down to do that. And then we have to recognize, what are the ways I'm protecting myself, and how is what I'm doing to protect myself hurting my connection with my partner, and what can I do to invite my partner back into connection with me. And we talk about, a lot of people think vulnerability is weakness, but it takes a heck of a lot of strength to be that vulnerable and reach for your partner and bring your wall down and say, will you meet me here? So that's how that connection, that's how that can look different, is we have to slow down, and someone somewhere has to take a risk. And it takes a lot of strength to take that risk. But if it's that important, if the relationship is that important, that's the motivation and the drive to do that. Did I answer your question?
Yeah, no, yeah, it's risky. It's risky, but yeah, you have to risk in order to reach each other for that secure connection you're wanting, especially during the holidays. So I'm thinking about, yeah, I'm trying to think about this because I like to play it out in a really concrete way to illustrate that for people. So I think, the risk for someone who's kind of saying, well, I want to be curious about this. What do you think the partner who's saying, no, we can't go to the in-laws this year. It's too dangerous. We can't have them over. It's off the table. I'm not willing to talk with you about this. What does it look like for them to take a risk? What do they really need?
So there's two things there. So if you have an issue, this is helpful to have you kind of put that example, because hopefully I could paint this out more clearly. So we're talking about the issue of whether we go around family members in a pandemic and take the risk of our health and safety, right? And some people are more casual about it, like, hey, it's no big deal. We want to be with family. We can be with family, and others are more scared, right? That's an issue that has to be solved. When there's secure connection, their connection doesn't hinge on that disagreement, right? We have trust in each other, we care for each other's feelings, and we can sit down and problem solve that together. And there may not be an easy solution, but when there's not secure connection, we're not talking about that anymore. We're talking about our relationship, right? So when it moves into a space of, if you won't go to my in-laws with me, I'm not important to you. You don't care about how I feel, right? So now I'm arguing with you about whether we go to the in-laws or not, but that's not really what I'm arguing about. It's a trigger for feeling like my feelings don't matter to you. What I value and what's important to me doesn't matter to you. And so I'm fighting to go to my in-laws or the in-laws, whatever. But that's not really what I'm fighting for. I'm fighting to be important. And if I don't recognize that, we're going to keep fighting about whether we go to the in-laws or not. If our relationship doesn't hinge on the issue, then we can sit together and actually talk about what are we going to do about visiting family or not. We might feel differently about it, but I hear and see you, and you hear and see me, and then we can actually focus together on the issue. But when it triggers those feelings in us, and maybe the other partner who's saying, no, we cannot go, is feeling something similar, like I never have a voice. And so I'm putting my foot down and I'm saying we aren't going. I'm forcing, what am I fighting for? I'm fighting for a voice. I'm not actually fighting, and maybe who knows how important it is to actually not visit family if I'm fighting for a voice. So we get lost in what we call the content, which the content in this case would be visiting family. But the underlying feelings are, I'm either fighting for a voice, I'm fighting to be important. And that's the part we have to slow down. If this is an argument, what is it we're really fighting for? And if we can understand that, then we can have the right conversation. And the risk taking would be, if I'm the one who's fighting to be important, I can turn to my partner in a very clear way and say, when you refuse to go with me, I start to feel like it doesn't matter how I feel. This brings up for me our pattern where I often feel like you don't really care what I want. And that really hurts. And that's what this is about. And until we can get in connection around that, we have no chance of solving whether we go to the in-laws or not.
Yeah.
So the risking is in getting to those more vulnerable emotions, that I'm scared that I'm not really important to you.
Yeah. If I just put my foot down and say no, I'm avoiding vulnerability. I'm avoiding risking. I'm avoiding exposing my own need to be important to you. And I'm also not reaching out and giving you the opportunity to respond back. So we're kind of both in this fight, where we're going to lose. We're not going to get each other. We're not going to get what we most want.
And as you say that, there are often times where someone doesn't even know, right, that's the underlying feeling. If I'm saying no, I'm putting my foot down, I might not even know that my vulnerable feeling is that I don't have a voice here. I don't have a say. And that's so hurtful. So I'm defending, right? I'm protecting myself in that moment and demanding my voice be heard, which then what is that message does that send to my partner? They don't hear my hurt. They hear, you're going to do what I say, and I'm not a willing partner to work that out with you. And so that's going to trigger and hurt the other person. And there goes the spiral, right? Because that reaction of, no, we're not going, what does that do? It reinforces the other person's experience of, you don't care how I feel. And now we're in our dance. We're in that cycle with one another, triggering one another in that pattern. And so that's where we need to slow down and tune in. What's happening for us? What are you feeling? What am I feeling? I like the question of what message are you getting from your partner? What meaning does it have? And what is it that you're really fighting for? And if you can identify that, that's the tuning into self, then you can clearly send a message to your partner. Here's my hurt and here's what I need. And then we can figure out if we're going to go to the family or not.
Yeah. I'm just thinking as you're talking about how we really get it backwards. We think about, here's how I want this conversation to end and what I want to happen. And that's my priority, right? When if I put the relationship as the priority, being secure, being accessible, responsive, engaged, like we talked about, we'll figure out the outcome. We'll figure out what we need to do. But then we get what we most want to, which is the relationship. But we've got to, during these tough holiday conversations, we've got to put especially during the toughest conversations, we've got to prioritize, how can I make it safe to connect? And how can I take a risk in talking about tuning in, that going back to what we were talking about, slowing down to tune in. Here's what I really need here. And I like what you said there, Dan. I need to have a voice maybe. I need to know I'm important to you. I need to know, that you care about me. And also you probably need one, two, or maybe all three of those things too, right? And if I can think about, that's the goal of this, whatever the outcome is, the goal of our conversation about whose in-laws or whether the in-laws come over, then we're going to be better off, and our relationship is going to be better off. Yeah.
All these conflicts typically are about loss of connection. And what we mean by it, just to make more concrete, loss of connection is sort of loss of the idea that I'm important to you, that you see me, that you hear me, that I'm relevant, right? That you're engaged with me. And that can be felt by the look on somebody's face, right? And we go from 0 to 60 in no time. So it happens really fast. Our emotions are really fast, especially if there's a history of this pattern, right? It happens even faster. So we got to slow that down.
Got to slow that down. Got to slow it down. It's good stuff. Speaking of slowing it down, I want to be mindful of our time and to make sure we can end on time, because we know we're all zoomed out for most of us. And number two, because I know Monday Night Football is on tonight, and I am not going to mess with that sacred tradition. in the midst of this. But so first, I want to see if there's anybody else out there in internet land with any questions. We'd love to take a moment to answer those, and if not, then we'll just kind of end with a couple of our last thoughts on how to navigate the holidays in the pandemic in your relationship. So, yeah.
Yeah, at this point, I'm not seeing any other questions. So I'll make a closing comment. And then Adam, if you'd like to make a closing comment. I mean, one thing I would say is don't hesitate to reach out for help. We at our practice at Healing Hearts Counseling offer telehealth for people who can't or don't feel safe to come in. I know many other practices are doing that. But this is the work we do in helping couples be connected. So if you're really struggling in your connection with your partner, really don't hesitate to reach out to us. And the other, I want to just end on a happy note, like just find ways to play and be with each other. And if you can, get into connection, really utilize each other as a resource and, use your creativity and spontaneity to just play with and be with each other this holiday in all the ways that you're able to within the restraints of what's going on.
Yeah, good words there, Dana. I would, if you're struggling with connection, don't hesitate to reach out for help. What I know from reading a lot of research is most couples wait years in distress before they reach out for help. So I know some of you might be listening and saying to yourself, take a risk. We've been stuck in our pattern and we feel so disconnected, and I couldn't imagine taking a risk to reach out to my partner. Or I don't know that they'd take a risk to reach out to me. It feels like there's so much distance between us. I hope that you don't take some of what we're sharing tonight as discouragement. For those of you who are able to talk, that's great. But if you feel like, man, I can't imagine doing that, hope you reach out for help to Healthy Connections or to Healing Hearts. We're all here, and all of our mission is to make sure couples just have a vibrant and healthy relationship, because everything flows from that. So thank you all, because you're already doing something tonight to take care of your relationship if you're listening to this. So you're well ahead of the curve. So thank you for joining us if you're joining us this evening, or if you listen to the recording. Yeah.
I just wanted to say that last part because we have had some people join us late. So if you've joined us late and didn't get to see a lot of this, there is going to be a recording released as soon as we're finished. So you can grab it and see the whole thing. And if questions come up for you that we weren't able to answer in tonight's recording, message us. We're happy to answer them after the fact. Thank you so much for joining us.
And also a quick thank you to Morgan, our technical assistant who hosted tonight. Thank you, Morgan, and for everybody else who helped make this possible.
Have
My
a very
pleasure.
happy season.
All right.